It is embarrassing to watch European leaders negotiate with other world powers. Do we no longer have negotiating power?
That's a good question, and I think the answer is definitely less so than we used to. I mean, we all the groveling letter sent by the General Secretary of NATO to Donald Trump is sort of a kind of a sign of where Europe is today. And we were just discussing here internally in our company the contrast to like 20 years ago, 22 years ago, when Dominique de Villepin, then the French Foreign Secretary, stood up at the United Nations and spoke against America. That would not be thinkable today. So yes, the European position is weakened. And it's not only because we are disunited, because we were split back then too. There were, we should, if you remember, the UK, Italy, Portugal had a different position to France and Germany. So there was a split, but we Europeans mattered back in those days. And in the Iran standoff that we had last week, the European were irrelevant. Nobody even talked to them. They weren't even informed. So this is a sign of weakness, and it reflects our economic position. It reflects our geopolitical position. It also reflects sort of our lack of engagement with the world, our inconsistent diplomacy. We never know whether sometimes we're with the Russians, then we're against the Russians. It really has been a shambles, an omni shambles, as they say in England. But that's basically where we are today.
In which areas do you think we are most vulnerable and dependent on other world powers?
Well, we are dependent clearly on the United States for security, and that's still the case, and that will remain this case for a long time. Even if we spend money, 5% of our economy on on defense, it will really only be 3.5%. But even if we do that, we will still be dependent on the United States for at least a decade, because it is the military independence is not about how much we spend. It's about how we spend it, how we organize it, what capabilities we have. We Europeans haven't got this. We Europeans are still national fragments. Every country has their own defense industry. We are duplicating weapon systems. I mean, there are like a dozen of howitzer systems in Europe, as the United States has only one. And you can say the same for battle tanks and all these other sort of military gear. We've duplicated everything. Things are more expensive. For example, ammunition in Europe is so much more expensive than it is in the United States. And Russia pays a fraction of the cost. So the fact that we're spending more money basically means that we're kind of stupid. Instead of actually, trying to get more for the money we spend, we're trying to spend more money. And that actually isn't going to help. So we need to rethink the way we do defense. This is all stuff that should happen. It's obviously not happening. And that's why I'm very, very pessimistic that the Europeans will make themselves independent from the United States. So this is a different world, and Europe is not really geared up for this sort of hostile world. We are still living in this sort of era of, globalization, of multilateral institutions, and we're confused about this. And, we see this in the foreign policy era where we would love to play a global role, and we think we have a right to it. But then we get insulted if nobody talks to us, because, why would you, if you're in the Middle East, why would you talk to Europeans? What would you conceivably achieve? That was, for example, different in the last decade when Iran and the Europeans negotiated the Iran nuclear deal. So Europeans still mattered like 10 years ago. And that has completely changed. And that, we have to ask ourselves some serious questions. And it's not just about, the voting procedures in the council and these technical issues. It is about, it's about who we are, our economies, our sort of backwardness in terms of technology. I think people, in the world don't look at Europe in the way they used to. We are no longer at the center of things. We are an aging, peripheral part of the modern world.